Why is gasoline so expensive? Why are we paying much more at the pump versus the actual price of oil, given the glut of crude in this very country? Is there some sort of sinister game being played here? Do we need Senate investigations? Is it like when Enron organized a conspiracy to keep energy from California? Like the natural gas corner, maybe? The run that took the futures to $14, even as a glut of natural gas was just beginning to form? Look, it sure is tempting, right? It's tempting to believe that. We know from data kept by the exchanges that there has been an increase in accounts of who hold gasoline for speculation for its financial value, so to speak, as opposed to its economic value. An idea that Dan Dicker, an oil trader, and my colleague at realmoney.com articulated on MSNBC last week and in a video he did with me. But I think it's something deeper and structural that has prices so high at the pump, although speculation has exacerbated the whole gasoline equation. The real issue here, the conundrum, is that we have oil in all the wrong places in this country, and a tremendous mismatch of refinery capacity and that, not speculation, but plus a Saudi Arabian recent cutback in production are keeping prices higher than seems logical to all of us. Currently, oil production here in the United States is increasing more dramatically than anywhere else on Earth, courtesy of the drilling technology revolution led by Core Labs for mapping, National Oilwell Varco for equipment, and Halliburton for servicing among the majors. EOG and Continental Resources are leading the effort to get more crude out of the ground, and they're succeeding beyond even their wildest dreams. The problem is we don't have enough pipeline capacity to get that oil to the major refinery complexes along the Gulf Coast. There are bottlenecks all over the place, including Cushing, Oklahoma, the now infamous hub that has kept so much crude from reaching the Gulf refineries that they are actually now importing oil from overseas. And consequently, prices for all fuels, including gasoline and diesel, are still being set off that marginal, very high Brent crude price feedstock, not our lower feedstock price, hence the lack of advantage from our own low-priced oil. We're not using it to refine. Well, in some cases we are. Some cheaper domestic oil is getting to some refineries, while other refineries have spent billions upgrading their equipment to handle heavy, high-sulfur crude. Hence why some refiners are making fortunes here, because they can get their hands on precious domestic oil. But once the oil is refined, this is what's important. These companies have the right to sell the refined product anywhere. It is, alas, a global market for refined product, and these refineries sell to the highest bidder. They just put it on ships to markets that are priced off of the more expensive Brent crude. And they can make more money than they could selling it here. So all this domestic oil, it ends up doing next to nothing to bring down the price of gasoline. Do you know, as recently as 7 years ago, we were a net importer of gasoline to the tune of 3 million barrels a day. Now we're a net exporter of 1 million barrels a day. Exporter. If that gasoline could be kept here, I have no doubt that we could lower the price at the pump, but how can you demand that? We just say, listen, guys, you can't send it overseas. How can that product be moved from the Gulf to the east or west when we don't have the pipeline capacity to transport it? Further, we just have a bad mix of refinery capacity. Most of our shale oil is super light, but much of our Gulf refining capacity was adjusted to handle heavy Canadian crude because the industry didn't believe that the giant Keystone pipeline would ever be a political issue. They would never believe that any president would actually want to stop the pipeline, given how it could lower gasoline prices and make us more energy independent. Those used to be two important policy goals of Washington. So we have refineries that are set up for heavy Canadian oil just when we wish they were set up for that light American oil. What a mismatch. We know you can transport that light crude by ship from the Gulf to the refineries that can actually use it on the East Coast because they handle that kind of crude. But because of this arcane law, the Jones Act, it costs too much to ship. As that law says, the ships carrying cargo to domestic ports from one domestic port to another, including oil, must be shipped in American-built tankers with American crews. These days, though, most ships are built in South Korea, and the shipping's done by Norwegians. During Superstorm Sandy, the president suspended that Jones Act, and that's why you got lower prices in the East. That brought enough product from the Gulf to end the crisis. But the law is now still in the books, and when the crisis ended, Jones Act came back in force. There's really no economic reason for this law these days other than to protect a few domestic jobs, but the unions would fight any repeal tooth and nail, and that's jacking the price up, too. No one's going to take this issue on, though. You might at last see a real rise in tanker ship companies like Nordic American if it happened, but don't hold your breath. Unions are too strong. Now, we know that many of the major oil companies and transporters of crude are working to solve these bottlenecks. Companies like EOG and Kinder Morgan are putting up rail lines. Some of the big road companies have developed huge oil shipping businesses, although a shortage of tanker cars trying to be made right now by Trinity and a couple other guys is weighing on even that infrastructure workaround. Another problem with why gasoline's so high. Once the rail lines are completed, there is a possibility the price at the pump could finally come down as the right oil, Bakken crude, for example, considered the lightest crude we have in this country, could go to the East Coast refineries designed to handle the lightest oil, which is currently being imported here at higher prices. And we know there are refinery outages that have kept prices higher than they should be. But you know what? I always hate that reason. Because in truth, refineries have always had outages. We won't have a real shot at getting oil prices down until the Keystone Pipeline is approved and we complete the cheaper linkage of our cleaner oil to our refineries in the East that are capable of handling that kind of crude. It needs to get to the West, too, but the permitting is so awful in the West that that's probably an impossibility. There is one place where the correct type of oil could be linked with the correct refineries, and that's California, where Monterey and Kern County may have the two largest untapped repositories of shale oil in the country. But good luck getting permitting for those fields. Of course, the use of natural gas as a vehicle fuel would render the whole discussion moot. The new 12-liter nat gas trucks engines being produced by Cummins later this year could be the big game changer, as 25% of our imported oils turned into diesel truck fuel. Cummins caught an upgrade today from Goldman Sachs. The engine will only make the case better as the year unfolds. I like the stock very much. Also, as important might be the converter kits that allow a combination of diesel and natural gas to be used together for trucks. Those are made by an outfit called Peak Fuel Solutions. No, you can't own that, but it is owned by Chesapeake and was the brainchild of the now deposed CEO Aubrey McClellan. But both will require a much bigger build-out of the compressed liquefied natural gas infrastructure network to become feasible. Hey, we need more gas stations. It's a real fuel, a competitive fuel to oil-based diesel that can actually have a big impact on pricing, lowering it dramatically for you and me at the pump. The good news here is that only job-creating pipelines and job-creating natural gas station construction and job-creating engine-making factories stand in the way of this bottleneck and lower gasoline prices for you and me. The bad news? Our current president does not seem to favor trying to bring down prices at the pump via fossil fuel substitution, or if he does, he sure hasn't gotten behind it to push it very hard. These are fossil fuels in the end. Here's the bottom line. Until President Obama makes a push for natural gas vehicles, says yes to the Keystone, unless the Saudis begin to pump more oil to lower the price of Brent crude, something they aren't going to do since they just curtailed production, it's simply a case of getting used to the higher gasoline prices as the world uses more oil, even as we, alas, are using less. The oil's in the wrong places. The refineries in the wrong places. We don't have enough infrastructure. And right now, it looks like never the twain shall meet. Mad Money's back after the break.